With just over a week to go to Election Day, the leaders faced each other tonight to debate the issues during this campaign. And joining us now for their analysis of the leaders' debate are Randy Rahamim, Principal and Navigator, Robin Sears, Principal at Earnscliffe Strategy Group, Mark Toohey, CEO at Ballacane Strategy and Execution, Anna Esselmint, Assistant Professor in the Department of Political Science at the University of Waterloo, and Diana Mehta, reporter with the Canadian Press. And a reminder, our producers are hosting a live chat tonight. You can join the conversation on our website, theagenda.tvo.org, or you can share your thoughts via Twitter using the hashtag AgendaTVO and hashtag ON debate. Hello, welcome to everybody.
Hi. Good to be here.
Okay, so the debate ended literally like 5 minutes ago. Now it's our turn to debate. So I want to go around the table. Randy, let me begin with you. First impressions.
A complete shock with Hudak's performance. I thought that he did a fabulous job of convincing all of us that he is a credible alternative for Premier. But that said, I think there was no clear winner. I think there was one clear loser, and that was Wynne. She appeared very ill-prepared. She didn't have a message. She didn't drive a narrative. But other than that, I thought Horwath and Hudak did a great job.
You were shocked because you didn't think Tim Hudak would perform that well?
Yeah, I think that, you know, there's no surprise that he's come across as wooden in the past a little bit difficult to resonate with, and I think that he overcame a lot of that in this debate. To me, he seemed personable, credible, calm in his cadence. His cadence was slower than everybody else's, thoughtful, measured. I was surprised.
Okay, Mark Toohey, what do you think?
Well, I've briefed other candidates before going into debates, and it's always a matter of reminding them that you're not there to win the debate. You're not there to have the best line. You're there to communicate with the audience on the other side of the TV camera. You're there to get your message across to them in a way that they understand it, so that they know who you are at the end of the debate. They know exactly what you stand for. And if I look at it that way, Tim Hudak, I think, did a very good job. I think Andrew Horwath did a decent job as well. Kathleen Wynne, I don't know what her message was still to this date. I was looking for it, and she kind of touched a little bit on plan, which is what I think her message was supposed to be, but she spent the whole debate on her back feet playing defense. She had opportunities to move forward and to be more proactive and to drive the message, as you said. She didn't take any of them.
Okay, Anna, 2-0 for Tim Hudak from this side. What do you think?
I agree. I think there were points where Kathleen Wynne had a chance to really highlight issues in her platform and highlight planks that she has that I think have been relatively palatable for voters. And she spent a lot of time on the defensive. And I think part of that is that Hudak did a very good job of trying to marry Wynne with McGuinty. So it seemed to me like Hudak is very interested in having a rematch against McGuinty. He's not interested necessarily in campaigning against Wynne. So we heard a lot about McGuinty through that entire debate. But I agree. I think I was surprised by Hudak doing relatively well. I was also surprised by Horwath. She seemed, at first, a little nervous, but seemed to gain her ground and made, you know, sort of rose to the occasion, showed a little bit of policy depth. But I don't think that there were necessarily any knockout blows, but we always look for these knockout blows. There were some very good one-liners that I think we'll probably discuss, but not necessarily anything that Kathleen Wynne would leave the debate saying, I've just completely been flattened.
Okay, Robin, we'll get into the meat of this, but your first impression, is there a word that sticks out for you, a moment that sticks out for you?
The Premier got clobbered. I was really stunned by how inappropriate her preparation for the role she had to play tonight was. And I say that as somebody who's done a lot of debate prep over many, many years. They knew she would be attacked from both sides. They knew she was going to be in the bullseye for both candidates. And they knew that the biggest challenge she had to face was the ethics question. She fumbled the ethics question badly off the top, and she had no punches or attacks at either of her two opponents, which she could have easily delivered. Andrea, you've never made clear what your program is. Mr. Hudak, you're going to wreck the province. She could have delivered very effective attack lines right off the top. And as our colleagues have said, she was on the defensive the whole night. I mean, basically, she gave Andrea and Hudak a pass. And I think they will have shone tonight very significantly in voters' minds.
All right, we are going to talk about why Kathleen Wynne, there seems to be, at least out of the four of you, consensus that she didn't perform well tonight, why that might have been. But first, let me go to you, Diana. You have had a close-up view of these three leaders. You've been on every bus during the campaign. So what did you take away? What was sort of your impression coming out of tonight?
Well, it was interesting. I was comparing what I've been hearing over the past couple of weeks on the campaign buses with what we're seeing in the debate. And I think, you know, Mr. Hudak has been delivering this message, jobs, 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 the entire campaign. And I think it worked really well for him to sort of stick to that one theme. And he was defending himself really well. On the campaign trail, it can get a little repetitive. You're like, oh my God, talk about something else. But today, I think if you're a viewer just tuning in, it really worked in his favor. Andrea Horwath has been, you know, trying over the last couple of days to be taken really seriously. Like, I am a real alternative. You can vote for the NDP. I think we saw that in the debate again today. And as my colleagues have said, I think there was a little bit of surprise that Kathleen Wynne perhaps didn't seem to be as at ease as she has been on the campaign trail. She's been asked the gas plans questions many times before. I mean, we've certainly asked her that. She has, you know, on the campaign trail said, you know, yes, we've made mistakes. I've apologized for that. But her delivery was so much better on the campaign trail, whereas today she seemed like she didn't know quite how to handle it. So that was surprising.
All right. The debate started off really focusing on the gas plants. It ran about 12 minutes, the exchange between the various leaders. I just want to play a little bit of the debate. Let's roll tape.
You are the co-chair of the Liberal election campaign. Yours is the signature on that contract that sold taxpayers up the river. You had a choice. You had an opportunity. You could have said no and saved us $1 billion. It was in front of you. Why didn't you just say no?
Tim, you know, I was, as I said, I was part of a government and I was part of a cabinet that made decisions that were not right. And I've appeared before the committee twice, and we opened up that process. I appeared before the committee twice, and I told the committee exactly what I knew and when I knew it.
All right, that was off the top of the debate. Robin Sears?
I mean, one of the things we teach in communication strategy is never enter the frame of your opponent's question if it's not helpful to you, even a TV host's. And she kept walking into the traps being laid for her by the questions instead of changing the channel to a strength. As Anna said earlier, did we hear anything about the transit plan? Did we hear anything about the pension plan? Did we hear anything about the government's
well, they did talk about transit and pension. She did talk about both those things.
But very muddled and buried in the middle.
And responsively. And it was as if she didn't have a narrative. It was really as if she did not have a story to tell. I mean, I think each one of these, of the leaders would have come forward today with a story that they wanted to tell voters who were tuning in.
And Hudak told a great story.
Hudak told a great story, to your point. Even Horwath, I think, told a good story and had a succinct plan. But it was very unclear to me as to what Wynne's plan was after hearing her tonight. I think she was very reactive. If I had to guess, I would assume that it was because the first question really threw her. I think she was shocked by the first question and couldn't get back on her feet.
Well, I think a couple of things happened. And I heard that on the radio as I was coming. I hadn't seen it on TV live, but she obviously knew that question was going to come up. She would have spent much of the whole campaign and the last couple of days honing the answer she wanted to give. The question that was asked of her was a double-barreled question, which is great if you're being the recipient of this. It was, how can I trust government with my pensions? How do I know my pension's going to be there? She could have gone straight to the pensions and talked the story she wanted to talk there. But she didn't. And I think that was probably a smart move because she knew that she wanted to address this head on as if she had nothing to hide. But I think, though, that she fumbled the answer and she couldn't find her way back to whatever it was that she was rehearsed. She kept coming back and coming back and coming back to the same answer, and she never quite got it right, and it sounded terrible.
Okay, I want to dig into this a little bit because, in fairness to all three, this is a hard thing to do, this kind of debate. And something that often proves to be a good asset is experience. And Kathleen Wynne, this was her first full leaders debate. She debated, of course, Andrea Horwath in the Northern debate that Tim Hudak didn't go to. Is that lack of experience, Anna, let me begin with you, by Kathleen, was that partially the reasoning for her quote-unquote poor performance tonight by your accounts?
Well, I would say Kathleen Wynne definitely has a lot of experience as a campaigner, both in her riding, and she's only been minister. So she's had to stand up in the House all kinds of times to answer questions. So I don't think that she's not unfamiliar with how to answer a question. She's not unfamiliar with how to deflect and move to the message that she wants to bring. But I think we probably underestimate some of the pressure that comes from that particular leaders' debate. And certainly we underestimate when you happen to step into the role as the leader where you are fending off blows from both sides. So I guess it's a bit mixed. She's not unfamiliar with the public, she's not unfamiliar with campaigning, she's not unfamiliar with answering questions, but it is, I think, a little bit of a different context when you've never experienced that particular situation and having to deal with those
And you know, the
attacks.
other thing about this format I think is really grueling is that they're there uninterrupted. No commercials, no breaks. Most debates in the old days, if I can sound like an old fart, there's almost like an opportunity to go back to the dressing room and get slapped around by your trainer a little bit, say, don't do that, don't do that, go back and do this. They're there all alone by themselves for 90 minutes. And if they get rattled, you can just almost see them unravel. I mean, you were watching her hunching over at various points and leaning way back. Her body language was totally defensive. And Hudak, who we always pretended was a robot in years gone by, had a natural, fluid body motion and astonishingly told the only powerful emotional story of the debate. The story about his grandparents' farm going bankrupt and the embarrassment of the furniture on the street. Who would have thought in a debate in Ontario, Tim Hudak would hit the emotional home run in a debate?
Okay, I have to ask this because on Twitter, a lot of people are saying, you know, story time with Tim Hudak. Here we go. He told several stories during the debate. Does anyone actually like those stories when a politician?
I think it makes it makes the candidate approachable. So I think that if you don't know much about people's policies, you're not going to spend time going to millionjobs.com or whatever it is. If you're not going to read a party's platform, you're going to make your decisions based in large part on a person's personality or how they come across to you. And so that's why these debates, it's partly policy, it's partly theatrics, right? And so how you speak, how you stand, what you wear, and how you interact with the others is often just as important as your policy.
It's a character test.
And it's a way of, what you want as the candidate is you want to be able to communicate with the audience that's watching. You want them to understand what you're saying. We listen to the closing statements. I don't know of anybody who understood what Kathleen Wynne said. She listed off a whole bunch of stuff that was on her checklist that she remembered. She spent a lot of the evening selling, if you've ever been in sales and marketing, you're supposed to not sell the features, you're supposed to sell the benefits. Tim Hudak explained the benefits. He explained how it affected this family. He explained what his transit plan would do for you. Well, you'll be able to ride it, it'll go from here. Wynne countered with all the features, the checklist of, well, our trains are shinier and they're going to be faster and they're going to cost less and they're going to. So what does that mean to me?
Okay, Anna, you study this stuff.
The other thing about the stories that are great is that it can actually tell you where they're targeting their voters. So Andrea talked a lot about the North, and then she talked, I think, about Sarnia. And Wynne was talking about Waterloo, because that's a real bellwether riding right now. It's very competitive in Kitchener Centre and in Waterloo. And Tim Hudak talked about Peterborough, and he talked about Niagara. So Grimsby. So it kind of gives you a clue as to where the leaders are actually, and where the parties are trying to target where their seats are. And if they can say both, you know, the area and a name, you know, so Horvath was pretty good, but she had no names attached. Hudak was great because he would say a name of the person who he talked to and where it is.
And kept referring to the questioner's name too.
And kept referring to Steve Bacon.
I think it was also interesting because yesterday, you know, in their last events, he actually said, I'm not going to be an actor, I'm not a good actor, I'm not going to put on a show. And I think he said that at the beginning of this debate as well. So he sort of like laid this groundwork for himself where he's like, don't expect much from me. And then he comes out with, you know, talking about his daughters, like Miller and Maitland, you know, and those sort of personal anecdotes. So I think that was a really good play by him, actually.
The thing about Andrea's performance, which I found fascinating, was she really got a free ride from the other two. I mean, it was fascinating to see Hudak was just the most gentle criticisms. And because Kathleen didn't understand another one of the basic rules of debates on television, address the opponent, not the camera. And she never looked at the person she was talking to. So Andrea stood there in that very elegant black outfit, and I have to say, the Premier's outfit, I don't want to be too critical, didn't strike me as appropriate for her role.
Why not?
Because it had silly buttons and it looked too skinny on her figure.
Okay.
If you want me to be blunt. But if she had addressed Andrea, said, Andrea, you really don't know what you're talking about. Here's what I know as Premier. She could have put herself in a position of authority that she never did because she just kept looking at the camera.
I just want to hop in here because I don't know, Robin, if in days before, when we generally had men up there debating one another, we would have talked about what they were wearing. But let me just push this a little bit further and say this. We used to have just guys, and then there used to be maybe one woman leader with, debating with 2 men or 3 men or whatever. Did that make any difference tonight that we had 2 women and 1 man?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I think Tim Hudak was slightly disadvantaged in that regard because he's in the aggressive gender, the aggressive party, being the furthest right wing. He has the most aggressive platform, so he had to be careful in how he came across. He didn't want to appear attacking these fragile women. But also, I think that his strategy to combat that might have been to prop up Andrea Horwath. I think that wasn't just to address this particular issue. I think it also helps him to have Andrea pull votes from the Liberals. But I think that he clearly gave, as Robin said, he clearly gave her a pass in terms of not attacking her platform, not attacking her policies, and just, in fact, oftentimes agreeing with her.
I think the only thing that I saw gender division about, which I'd be interested in what the colleagues think, is when he twice, quite patronizingly, said to the Premier, I used to think you were an honorable person. I used to respect you. As if he were addressing a junior almost, or somebody who he didn't see as a peer.
Did that have anything to do with the fact that she's a female?
I don't think a man would have said that to another man in quite as patronizing a way. That was my impression.
I didn't read it that way, but I'd be interested in your thoughts. I mean, was that a gender issue?
I don't know necessarily that it was a gender issue. It was certainly a little bit patronizing, but I don't know if that would be any different with a man. But I think we were also quite sensitive, I mean, certainly around this table, about watching for those particular things. So we might be a little more hypersensitive to that. But I mean, aside from those, so those were 2 remarks that we noticed when we were watching the debate that we kind of thought, oh, would that be bullying? Is that a little passive aggressive or just aggressive? But
also unnecessary, right? Like, I don't think given his performance, I actually don't think he had to go there. I can't understand what he would have gained from that approach.
Yeah, a couple of them. I think having two women was actually helpful for Tim. Right? So I take the opposite point of view. I think having 1 there, then you have the risk of looking like you're picking on someone, especially if it was just the Premier and female. Then that could be a gender issue if you're pushing back at her and not at the other opposition leader, which you're not going to push as hard at. But secondly, I think what Tim's mandate coming in today would have been is to sound firm, fair, and straight, hard talking, but to come across as not
likable,
scary, right? And so I think he was very polite. He didn't talk over. The women were jumping in, talking at each other, and at the beginning of the debate, he was fortunate enough to not be one of the first 2. So he kind of sat it out. And really, he didn't have anything to lose by not jumping into the fray.
It was 8 minutes.
He was focused on his message, and bickering back and forth, that's not his message.
Okay,
right?
I want to play a little bit more from the debate. We were talking about feistiness and aggressiveness. Let's roll this tape.
But one of the changes that Ms. Wynne brought in as education minister was that the person in front of the class wouldn't necessarily be the best teacher. It would be who was ever on the union seniority list, who was around the longest. I reject that. I want to see the teacher in front of the class who is going to inspire them. I remember the story of
your plan, Mr. Hudak, will lead us exactly where we've been too many times in this province. So you two were talking about the same old movie before. I got to tell you, the movie that throws our education system into chaos. That you have to be honest with people, Mr. Hudak. This plan does not work. We're still in the courts right now with the wrong-headed direction that the Liberals went in.
All right, coming out of the Northern Leaders debate where Andrea Horwath and Kathleen Wynne faced off, Andrea Horwath was criticized by some for coming across as a little bit too angry, for taking some swings. Did she learn from that tonight, or was that a problem for her?
I don't think it was a problem for her. I think she delivered her message, and she went after the Liberals and she went after Hudak for his bad math. And it's funny because someone actually asked her in a scrum recently, was Angry Andrea going to come out in this debate? And she actually said, I have a nickname called the Steeltown Scrapper because she's from Hamilton and I'm not afraid to bring it out. And I don't think she was necessarily overly angry, but her delivery was on point, and she went after people because that's her job. That's what she does.
And she's going after the same. There's some hardcore NDP voters that are going to go with her. There's hardcore Tories that are going to stay with Hudak, and there's some hardcore Liberals that are going to stay with Wynne. And then there's a bunch of disaffected Liberals that aren't happy with what the government has done. And there's a whole bunch we've seen in the polling of undecideds. So Horwath and Hudak are going after the same undecideds.
But I think the point there, Mark, which I find fascinating when you consider Wynne's strategy, leave aside the execution, but just the strategy of what she was apparently trying to do tonight. She didn't shore up her base because she didn't offer a very solid defense of her role as Premier, let alone the McGuinty record. She didn't reach out to the persuadables with any convincing message pushing the other two aside. And she didn't offer a vision of herself as a human being. Tim offered that very powerful story about his youth, whether you believe it or not. It was emotionally moving. And Andrea presented herself as the Steeltown scrapper, but, you know, not overly. I just don't understand strategically what it was she was trying to do.
For Wynne. Yeah, I agree. I think Andrea Horwath needed to look strong because she needs to attract the undecideds who don't like this government, and so she needs to convince them that she can form a government and that she can do. And I think she did a good job of that.
And she appeared more moderate and more reasonable and more conservative than Kathleen Wynne did at times. I mean, not just from a policy perspective. When she was speaking to energy, she talked about collapsing 4 different energy organizations into one. She talked about
drivers.
Yeah, exactly.
Whoever thought you'd see the Democrats talking about drivers and Tories attacking cops? What a strange world.
Mark, let me, you know, Robin's sort of flummoxed by what happened with Kathleen Wynne tonight. I mean, you have prepped many candidates, you have worked on strategy and something. I mean, can you answer Robin's confusion? What happened?
Well, I agree with him. I think that she had a clear set of, she had to come out looking like she had to attack the gas plants and the scandals issue directly. She had to do what she started to do, which is sort of take responsibility for it. But then she had to be able to step past it and show us why she should get to keep her job. And that's the question that you know, all of the backroom boys for both Horwath and Hudak were screaming into their televisions, you know, when they were in that debate, saying, "Tell her, you know, if you've admitted to this wrongdoing, why should you get the luxury of being able to keep your job? Why should we reward you with re-election?" Nobody asked that, but that's what the viewers were asking, I think, right? And she never answered that. I think she had a plan. I think it's exactly what we thought it was, and I think that she had the misfortune of getting the worst question she was going to get that night came cold right at the beginning, and I don't think she ever recovered.
But Mark, I'd flip that. The worst thing came off the top. It should have got better after that. It got worse.
But I think she just because she kept coming back to that.
And it set the tone because everybody, both of the other leaders ganged up on her on that particular issue, and I think that she became so timid and probably just couldn't recover.
I think the other thing that's interesting too is one, there are also 2 clear visions. Right, so it's not hard to contrast the 2 visions, what Hudak's offering and what Kathleen Wynne is offering, and even what Andrea Horwath is offering. I think the other interesting thing, though, about
Kathleen Wynne offering.
Well, but the infrastructure, like the spending to get out of our economic malaise
but we
versus
still don't know
the
how
contract.
Much it is, or how she was going to pay for it.
Or
what the priorities were, or which one mattered.
I actually think her objective tonight was pretty simple. All she had to do was appear the least scary of the bunch and the most reasonable, and she failed.
I mean, we should have walked out of the debate tonight if she had won saying, Andrea's not a premier, Tim's still a thug. And instead we have completely the opposite impression.
Yeah. Okay, I want to talk more about substance in just a minute, but I have to ask, because again, on social media, a lot of people were talking, there was a lot of hand movement, this gesticulation stuff. Does that work? Did that work for any of you, all that hand movement?
If you do it right, I thought...
Did anyone do it right tonight?
I thought Tim's hand movements were very effective.
That's a strategy, right, to do that?
And what Andrew was too much...
I like that, though. I thought that looked, I thought that looked much more natural.
Yeah, I thought Tim's was cool.
I thought Tim was good, but Tim had been practiced, but he was practiced as a professional. Like he did it well.
But Wynne looked like she was going to take flight.
Like she was doing some kind of Korean dance craze.
She was walking back and forth a lot, which might have been a little distracting.
She has been known. You've seen this on the campaign
she likes to do the thumb pinch. What I thought was the one sort of body language thing that's struck me was when Tim Hudak was attacking her for that gas plant issue, like, why didn't you say no? She just sort of stood there looking ahead, not looking at him. So it almost sounded like he was yelling at her, like she was a bad student in school and she was just standing there taking it. And it just seemed a little off-putting for me as a viewer. Okay, Diana, let me stick with you for a minute. In terms of substance, we've gone through style and performance. In terms of substance, did we get any? Did we get anything new tonight? I don't know if we got anything new. It depends how much you've been following the campaign, I guess. I mean, for me, I heard a lot of the same lines over and over again. I guess I was a little surprised that I didn't hear more from Kathleen Wynne and Andrew Horwath about Tim Hudak's plan to cut 100,000 jobs, and we heard about it, but we didn't hear about it as much as I thought we would, because it's been such a polarizing issue on the election trail. And the same goes for his questionable math and the million jobs plan. I thought we would hear more of that, but we didn't. I mean, to Kathleen Wynne's credit, she did try. She tried to say, a couple of times, Mr. Hudak will push us back to recession, which is a line we've heard. She tried to say, the math doesn't make sense, but it just didn't seem to stick as much as you would think it would.
The only substantive announcement that I heard was that Tim Hudak would resign in well, he didn't say in 8 years, but I'm assuming in 8 years, if his million jobs plan didn't work out. So that was something new. I hadn't heard that before. But I wouldn't take too much stock in that. I think that's more of a ploy. I think ultimately a politician could say, well, it's only been 4 years. I need another. I was looking at things from a two-term perspective.
His plan is an 8-year plan. Mark, you grumbled, no one cares about
I don't think people care about the policy. And this is from a guy who wrote hundreds of pages of policy for a mayoral election that was never used because we didn't need it. Because people want to know whether they trust people, right? It's about who this person is. Do you trust him or do you trust her to run the government? And what I heard sort of coming through from the three candidates today, Tim Hudak, his message that I think came through was, he's going to be honest, he's going to tell you the truth no matter how hard it is, and he's going to work on jobs.
That's a line though, Mark. I'm the only guy that's going to be honest in this?
No, that is a line. And he kept going back to Kathleen Wynne every time she said anything. Yeah.
Line, L-I-N-E, yes.
He kept going back saying, see, she didn't tell you the truth. See, she didn't tell, even when she did, it doesn't really matter. He was pressing home that that's his differentiator. Andrew Horwath, her message was, I'm here because life is too affordable. Life is too hard. Government should make it easier for you. And what I heard from Kathleen Wynne was, if everything is fine, don't make any changes. You can't go this way, you can't go that way. Don't make changes.
I guess I would say there are two kinds of campaigns and there's two kinds of debates in campaigns. One is where policy counts. They're rare, but we have had them. And the other is where character counts, because the voters are not sufficiently engaged to be able to make a judgment about the nuance of policy, or they're confused and they don't know who to believe. So then they make an assessment of character. And I think this debate tonight was a microcosm of the campaign as a whole in that respect. Which one of you three do I believe? Which one of you do I like? Who's for me? And those assessments are much more personal and emotional assessments than they're policy assessments. And again, we're sounding like stuck records. I think that Horwath and Hudak won that contest.
Okay, the H's are doing well according to this table. Diana, did you expect more substance tonight, or were you expecting, as Robin says, sort of character debate?
It's hard to tell, right? It's hard to cram we've done now, 5 weeks of a really long campaign. It's hard to cram that into an hour and a half long debate, especially when you've got all these different responses. So I think we did hear policy nuggets here and there. I think with Ms. Wynne, she threw out a lot of her plans, but sometimes they came at you too fast, and you're like, and I was listening, and I'm like, oh yes, I've seen that. That's in her platform. I know what she's talking about. But for a viewer, perhaps it came at you in too much of a barrage, and you're like, whoa, what? So I think there was substance. How much that resonated with viewers, I guess that'll remain to be seen.
And is that bad political marketing?
Well, I was thinking the Tim Hudak line about, I'll resign after, if you can't do that, that's classic consumer politics. And that's where you think about political consumer. We consume democracy, or we consume politics. So if I don't do this, there's a money back guarantee, right? I will step down if I can't deliver that. And you can demand this of me, and if I don't follow through, then this is what,
It's effective?
This is what I'll resign. Well, I'm not sure how effective it is, but it speaks to how politics can be done, and certainly how we look at politics. So what are our choices? What will you give me? How am I better off? What are you planning? And certainly we think about that in terms of citizens, but much more now it's about sort of, I'm a product that you can buy, that I've been designed, I know what you want, and if you don't get this, I will give you this back, which I think leads to a bit of that disengagement in terms of voters overall, because we're not thinking about it so much as obligations and responsibilities and privileges, we're thinking about it in terms of shopping.
And tell us how it benefits me.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
And Andrew Horwath did a good job of that, and I think Tim Hudak did a good job of that. Kathleen Wynne told us a whole list of stuff she was going to do. So what? Right? The Million Jobs Plan, kind of a silly name. No one on earth, I'll bar none, no one on earth knows if that's the right number, if they can do it, if that's how many they need.
But it's memorable.
Doesn't matter, right? What we get from that, if you're a voter, is, okay, he cares about jobs. And whether I have a job or I don't have it. If I don't have a job, that's what I care about. If I do have a job right now, I'm afraid of not having a job. So I think that's important.
Again, people are talking about, they didn't talk about healthcare, they didn't talk about poverty or social housing, and some of the issues that I think Ontarians wanted them to talk about. That didn't matter by what you're all sort of agreeing on.
We don't talk about those sort of things in debates ever. Anybody in the Twitterverse who thought they were going to get that tonight, they were misled. Debates are about presenting a message about yourself and your vision for the province of the country. And you only use as those subjects things that will hurt your opponent or help the impression of you. Social housing has not been on the policy agenda in Ontario for a long, long time.
Okay, we like to debate. We like to debate and talk about issues on our program, so that's where you'll find it. I have to ask you, Robin, you got some cheat sheet scorecard. What the heck is that thing?
Well, I did I did 4 characteristics times 6 questions. I did affect or likability, credibility, intensity, and poise. And I have to say that Tim Hudak and Andrew Horwath came in first or second in 5 out of 6 rounds.
What round did Kathleen Wynne come in first?
She didn't come in first. She only came in second in the second question. What was the second question? I forget.
It's energy.
Energy.
Yeah.
And it's a silly thing to do because it isn't a numerical process, but it sort of helps.
An algorithm?
It helps me remember, different bits of the night.
Because you can productize that and sell it.
It's curious. Maybe I'll tweet a picture of that later.
But the other thing that didn't happen tonight, we were all saying towards the end, what are the clips? Because a lot of people don't watch these debates. But the debates are important in forming opinion because clips of them circulate for the next week, and they do frame opinion and judgment. And there weren't a lot of really good soundbite clips tonight, I don't think.
Perfect segue for my next question, because I want to ask each one of you, what was the meatiest exchange for you tonight?
I think for me, it was definitely when, actually, I think it was Horwath's line about Buckley's.
And exchange?
The meatiest exchange.
I think the Buckley's one about it tastes awful and it won't work.
To Tim Hudak.
Yeah, to Tim Hudak. I thought that was actually.
So that'll make
she's
the
been
rounds
planning
on
that one
the
for
news
a while.
channels.
I thought it was Hudak's line around, Alberta exports oil, we export youth. And
Mark?
I think, well, if you talk about, the problem with the cute line is that will get clipped, and each candidate's going to get the same amount of ink tomorrow. And the cute clip will get the ink, and we won't know what this person stood for. So if you avoid the cute clip, the only clip that the other person has is something perhaps substantive. I think the meatiest exchange, frankly, was right off the beginning, was Kathleen Wynne on her back feet, simply unable to step past the gas plants. She couldn't answer it well, and she couldn't pivot from there and go anywhere else. She was lost.
I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry.
She said the word apology several times. She said, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I mean, Tim had a perfect response to that. When someone apologizes and repeats the same behavior, you tend not to believe
And he said
them.
that 2 times, yeah.
But it seems to me that the nightmare for the Liberal strategists in this election as a whole is that we come into the final week and we're still talking about the bloody gas plants. They tried so hard to change the channel throughout the campaign away from that. And tonight, she's re-injected that as the ballot question.
And here's the irony of that, is I don't think the average voter cares about the gas plants.
No, it's
so what it means is
iconic.
we're not talking about what they wanted us to be talking about.
Exactly. I was going to say $1 billion. $1 billion is too much for anyone to even I can even contemplate $1 billion. I know what $30 is on my hydro bill, or I can contemplate those things. $1 billion is like beyond the realm.
I don't understand why they don't bring that down to the individual. I know one's saying, that's $5,000 out of your own family budget. I don't understand why they've never taken that approach to make it more personal.
Diana, gas plants, 15 minutes out of an hour-and-a-half debate was a little shy of 15 minutes. Is that representative of what's been happening on the campaign trail? Has that really been dominating?
I don't know if it's been dominating, but it's certainly come up quite a lot. Tim Hudak, well, actually Andrea Horwath for starters, tries to bring it up in everything. Like, she's talking about school nutrition and she'll bring up the gas plants. She's talking about expanding transit and she'll say the Liberals wasted money on the gas plants that could have gone to transit. So certainly she's been trying to bring up the gas plants at almost every opportunity, sometimes to the point of, you know, okay. Tim Hudak certainly at points has definitely brought them up. I remember there was this one photo op where we went to the site of the Mississauga gas plant, and he did a press conference there with the little pit in the background, and they had a banner that they put up that had $1 billion in to sort of drive home the point. So certainly he's brought it up. But, you know, as my colleagues are saying, this is something that we were talking about at the last provincial election campaign. So sometimes you have to wonder, like, wow, how are we still talking about this? But, you know, as Robin said, this is now another issue that's just come up again.
And 9 days left. Can the Liberals change the channel now? Can they get off gas plants?
I think they're going to try very, very hard. I think that we might see, because they've been pushing real hard. Mr. Hudak's million jobs plan and his 100,000 workers cuts has been sort of fodder that they've been pushing out every single opportunity that they get. I was actually surprised I didn't hear Kathleen Wynne say enough times today. You know, she's had this line that Mr. Hudak is going to tear the province down and we're going to build it up. I didn't hear that from her, but perhaps we'll hear that a lot more. She likes to stand and do these photo ops with like nurses and teachers behind her to draw home the point. These are the people who are going to lay off. She did a campaign op at the water treatment plant in Walkerton to sort of drive home the point that this is what a Hudak government will bring you. So I think we're going to see a lot more ramping up of that rhetoric.
Marjorie, how do you change the channel at this point? I mean, we're well into the campaign. We got, 9 days. So how do you change the channel as a politician at this point? We're after the debate. The Premier, you guys say, didn't do very well tonight. How does she change the channel? Can she? Well,
you fund healthcare pharmaceuticals for young kids who are going to die otherwise. They did that today, but I don't think that went anywhere. Was it Maddie Vanstone? Yeah, that was a timely decision. That was incredibly cynical, I thought. And by me or by them? No. It's very cynical by me, but I specialize in that.
Okay, can the channel be changed from what?
I think they're going to have a hard time, and I don't think I think the gas plants is the metaphor, but I think the real issue is the trust and the integrity. And I think what the disaffected Liberals and the undecideds were looking for tonight was Kathleen Wynne is saying, it's okay, trust me, I'm different enough. I don't think any disaffected Liberals would have watched tonight's performance and thought, you know what, my confidence is renewed. I don't think so. I think a lot of them are saying, you know what, let's lose and have another leadership crisis.
You know, interesting you say that. For Ipsos poll, a new one came out saying, Ipsos Reid poll, about 40% of Ontarians could make up their minds of whom to vote for based on what they just saw during tonight's leaders' debate.
And I think another thing we saw tonight was the propensity for political campaign managers like generals to fight the last war. The Liberals thought they were fighting the same Tim Hudak they were fighting last time, and that the million jobs combined with a very android, thuggy kind of posture would be genuinely frightening. But instead they got Tim Hudak talking about his daughter almost tearfully and the million jobs. So there's a dissonance between the messages that they thought they were competing against. And to me, it says that they misunderstood the challenge they had, which was to say, I'm new, this is my vision for the future. That's all behind us.
But for Tim Hudak and Andrea Horwath.
Okay, speaking of things that are behind us, we got about 3 minutes left, and I want to try and get everyone in on this, but I'll start with you, Anna. What do they do now? Debate's over, you got 9 days left. What do these leaders do now?
So now I think they go to their hard swing ridings and drive home some messaging. I mean, partisan advertising, I don't know if you've noticed, but there were 3 weeks blackout, 22 days because we're by-election rules for this particular campaign. So we actually haven't had the full onslaught of ads. No, so I think from this they will take that and go hard on what key messages they want to bring to the targeted ridings that we heard in the debate tonight.
Okay, Robin, what do they do?
Randy,
sorry.
That's okay. I think what they need to do, well, the big question for me will be, is Tim Hudak able to carry that same confidence through to the end of the election? What he showed us today was a very confident, calm, credible, not so risky alternative, and the question will be is with enough media attention over the next number of days, will he be able to carry that through?
Okay, Randy, Robin, what do they need to do?
Andrea needed to say, if you don't like Tim Hudak and you're mad at the Premier, you can vote for me. And I think she did it.
Okay. And Diana, what will you be looking for? What do these leaders need to do in the home stretch now?
I think it's just going to be a ramping up on all fronts. I think you're going to have Andrea Horwath saying, take me seriously, I am a viable third option. I think you're going to have Tim Hudak saying, we definitely need a change, and I'm the one who's going to give you straight up, tough love, hard facts, and you can go with me. And I think you're going to have Kathleen Wynne working really hard to say, you know, stick with the Liberal government. We're the measured, balanced, steady hand, and we're the ones who are going to give you the best future going forward.
Mark, I don't know who's sleeping well tonight and who's not, but tomorrow morning they're all up to get out there the last 9 days. What do they need to do? I'm
not going to disagree with anything that was said here, so I'm going to answer a different question because it occurred to me watching the program and walking in here tonight.
You got 50 seconds.
I thought, well, I don't need that much. I thought I work in radio now. See, I just wasted a whole bunch, so I don't need it. I thought Tim Hudak not going to the Northern debate was a mistake. I now think it was brilliant. I think that nobody saw him coming, and they had no opportunity to prepare for the different Tim Hudak that we saw tonight.
Okay, I want to thank all 5 of you for coming in tonight and for debating the debate. We will see what happens with the polls in the next couple of days and also what happens on election night on June the 12th. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.